Marcus Randall, San Diego, California. The office phone buzzed on the table, interrupting his thoughts. Mark Randall looked up from his monitor and extended his hand, but stopped. It was just another email. He leaned back in his chair and looked out the window. Warm San Diego sunlight flooded the streets, casting long shadows from the palm trees lining the sidewalks. The air smelled of salt and hot asphalt, a typical morning on the coast. The day promised to be ordinary. Several meetings, a couple of calls to clients, lunch with partners. Everything is according to plan. But one email in my inbox changed everything instantly. Sender unknown. Subject, how do you stand it? Squinting suspiciously, he opened the message. Inside was a short text. I thought you deserved to know the truth. Below it is an attachment. Zip archive with a simple name, Emily. Marcus clenched his jaw. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, wavering between pressing and refusing. However, something inside, an intuitive feeling, told me, this is important. He double-clicked on the file. A window with a dozen images appeared on the screen. For the first few seconds, the brain refused to perceive what it saw. The photographs were of his wife, Emily. She was kissing some man. The evening light fell on them in one of those luxurious restaurants on the coast where Marcus took her on their anniversaries. The next shot is of them holding hands, smiling at each other in a way she hasn't smiled at him for a long time. Then even worse, embrace. Hot, passionate, without doubt and shame. And the last photo is their silhouettes disappearing into a hotel room. Marcus slowly leaned back, feeling the world fall apart. My ears were ringing and my throat was dry. He blinked several times, but the picture did not disappear. Everything inside tightened. My breathing became ragged, my hands clenched into fists. His first reaction was denial. Could it be some kind of mistake? Photoshop? A stupid prank? But the more he looked, the more clearly he understood that this was reality. The most vile and cruel reality. The phone vibrated again, bringing him out of his daze. Marcus turned to him sharply, as if his life depended on the call. Damn. He breathed, running his hand over his face. How could he not notice? All this time he was so immersed in work, in projects, in endless calls that he did not see the most obvious. He himself gave Emily complete freedom, ignored warning signs, and justified her late returns and coldness. Now everything has become crystal clear. He simply did not look in the right direction. Who would have ever thought that a man like him could tolerate such a thing? He was not a weakling. He was not a spineless cuckold willingly bearing humiliation on his own head. This is clearly a novel, a cheap drama, and he is in the leading role. It's as if someone decided that he was the one who suffered, who would accept it and move on. No, this is not his story. He didn't know who sent these pictures, but one thing was clear. It was not just a rumor, not empty jealousy, but a fact. He could no longer pretend that everything was fine. He closed the images, but they were already imprinted in his memory, as if burned into his retina. He tried to remember where Emily had been that evening. What excuses did she have? Late meetings? Dinner with girlfriends? Now it all seemed like just a poorly played lie. Marcus picked up his cell phone and just stared at the screen for a while. A storm of emotions raged inside. Anger, humiliated pride, pain. He felt that a little more, and he would break something against the wall. Finally, he took a deep breath and dialed the number. Marcus, Vince, I urgently need your advice. Can you meet? His voice sounded even, but Vince immediately understood that something had happened. Vince, of course, brother. Vince, where are you? Marcus glanced at the photos, then turned off the monitor. Marcus, at the port bar in 20 minutes. Vince, I'm on my way. Bar, Port, San Diego, California. Marcus stepped inside the bar and was immediately overwhelmed by the thick smell of alcohol and wood smoke. The establishment was not too noisy, an ideal place to talk without unnecessary ears. He glanced around the room until he saw Vince, who was already sitting in the corner with 2 glasses of whiskey, slowly swirling the ice in his glass. Vince, damn, brother, you look like you're ready to kill someone. moving one of the glasses towards him. "Vince, what happened?" Marcus sat down and took the glass, but didn't take a sip. He clenched his jaw, struggling to find words. Anger, humiliation, anger, everything was mixed inside him. Vince, noticing his condition, leaned forward slightly, waiting for an answer. "Marcus, Emily is cheating on me." Vince didn't blink, but his gaze became cold, wary. "Vince, damn. Are you sure?" Marcus, photo. Right in the face. They kiss. They hug. Hotel. Everything is there. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened the images, and handed it to his friend. Vince took the phone, glanced at the photos, and exhaled through clenched teeth. "Vince, damn it." He put the phone on the table and downed his whiskey in one gulp. His gaze narrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Vince, what are you going to do?" he asked, looking at Marcus closely. Marcus took his first sip of whiskey. It burned my throat, but did not bring relief. He stared at the table, thinking for a moment. "Marcus, I don't know yet. That's why I'm here. We need to come up with something." He paused, searching for words. "I'm obviously not going to eat this crap." Vince chuckled and shook his head. "Vince, oh, I love that attitude." Marcus nodded, clenching his fist on the table. His fingers trembled. He took a deep breath and looked Vince straight in the eyes. "Marcus, 15 years, Vince. We've been together since the beginning. Home, business, and most importantly, children. What the hell? Where did I screw up enough to deserve this?" Vince looked at him silently, but there was understanding in his eyes. He poured himself another whiskey, took a small sip, and sighed. "Vince, do you seriously think that everything is because of you? You worked, you created a life for your family. Maybe you were too busy, but damn, that's no excuse for her." Marcus clenched his jaw, barely containing his anger. "Marcus, what if I missed something? Maybe I really took a wrong turn somewhere. I always thought Emily and I had everything under control. And now I look at these photos and see that all this time I lived in a damn illusion." They sat at the bar for another hour, discussing the right thing to do. Marcus was trying to figure out what to do next: get a divorce, take revenge, or simply disappear from her life. Vince offered various options, from legal proceedings to more creative ways of retaliation. "Vince, the main thing is don't do anything impulsive, brother. We need to think." Vince shook his head, leaning his elbows on the table. "If you want to punish her, it must be cold-blooded and competent." "Marcus, I don't want to just punish her. I want her to feel the same pain that I feel, to realize what I've lost." Marcus took another sip of whiskey. "Vince, then we'll think through everything down to the details." Vince nodded. "You didn't deserve this, but now you have a chance to play it right." Marcus Randall office, San Diego, California. Marcus returned to the office later than planned. A headache throbbed somewhere in the back of his head, the consequences of drinking whiskey, and an endless stream of thoughts. Vince gave him food for thought, but he was still far from a clear plan for revenge. He sat down at the table, threw the keys onto the surface, and ran his hands over his face. A couple of urgent work issues awaited his solution. He opened his laptop and scrolled through his emails. The secretary had already left the printed documents on the table. 20 minutes later, he closed the report folder and exhaled. Enough. Now he had something more important. "Marcus, damn, it's time to find out what awaits me." He picked up the phone and dialed Nick Farrell, his lawyer. He answered almost immediately, as if he had been waiting for this call. "Nick, Mark, I haven't heard your voice for a long time. What's happened?" "Marcus, I need a meeting. Urgently. Can you come to my office in the next half hour?" Nick was silent for a second, but there was no surprise in his voice. "Nick, something serious?" "Marcus, very much." "Nick, okay, I'll be with you in 30 minutes. Half an hour later, the office door opened and Nick Farrell entered, a tall, stately man with an impeccably fitting suit and the attentive gaze of a man who knows too much about other people's problems. "Nick, let's lay it out. I can see from your face that this is rubbish." Marcus ran his hand through his hair, glanced at the glass of water in front of him, but did not drink. Marcus, Emily is cheating on me. The lawyer did not react with violent emotion. He only nodded, waiting for the continuation. Marcus, someone sent me evidence anonymously. Photos, notes, everything you need. Now I need to figure out how to act so as not to be left without everything. Nick exhaled and leaned his elbows on the table. Nick, well, listen carefully. California is a state with community property laws. This means that even if she cheated, this does not give you the right to deprive her of half of the property. But there are nuances. A long conversation followed in which Nick explained that even with evidence of infidelity, Emily could claim her share of the property. However, if Marcus can gather information wisely, he can minimize losses. Nick, now you need to prepare everything that can play in your favor. Financial documents, statements, evidence of her expenses, evidence of her behavior. The more cards you have in your hands, the better. Marcus, got it. So I need time. Nick, exactly. We'll meet when you have a complete set of data. Only then will it be possible to decide which strategy to follow. Marcus nodded. It had been a long journey, but now at least he had a foothold. After Nick left, Marcus sat in silence for a long time, looking at the turned-off laptop screen. A plan was beginning to take shape, but there was too much ahead that needed to be worked out in detail. Evening at home dinner. Marcus entered the house and was immediately enveloped by a feeling of familiar comfort. The smell of fried chicken and fresh bread filled the kitchen, mingling with the light notes of lavender from the scented candle Emily always lit for dinner. Everything looked the same as always, but now for him it was all stage decoration for a play where he played the role of an unsuspecting husband. In the kitchen, Emily was leaning over the stove, stirring the sauce, while the children, Travis and Savannah, sat at the table, chatting about something of their own. He stood in the doorway, watching them as if from the side, like a spectator who had just learned that the scene was fake. Everything that happened looked the same as on thousands of other evenings, but now he saw every detail differently. I knew that behind the smiles there was a lie, and behind the warmth betrayal. Savannah, Dad, you're late today. We already thought you'd have to heat up dinner in the microwave. Marcus chuckled, trying to look relaxed, even though he was clenching inside. Marcus, things to do, savvy. There were urgent matters at work. Travis, you look tired. Rough day. Marcus, you could say that. Emily turned to him with her usual warm smile. Or maybe he just hadn't noticed before how forced that smile was. Emily, you made it in time for dinner, that's the main thing. Let's sit down while everything is hot. Marcus sat down at the table, glancing over at Emily. She looked perfect, not a hint of guilt, not a shadow of doubt in her eyes. Either she was a great actress, or deep down she was sure that he would never find out anything. His fingers tightened on his fork. He watched as Savannah talked about a new project at school, as Travis joked, and Emily laughed. And it all seemed normal. But now he knew it was a lie. There was an unpleasant feeling in the pit of my stomach, and one thought was pulsating in my head. How long had he lived in this illusion? Marcus, how was your day? Savannah, oh, we had such a fun laboratory at school today. We were doing experiments with chemical reactions, and my test tube almost exploded. Can you imagine? Travis, yes, I saw it. Our teacher almost turned gray. Emily laughed, stealing a glance at her husband. Emily, you see, Mark, our children are real scientists. Maybe someday they will make a great discovery. Marcus smiled, but everything was boiling inside. He watched his family, this moment that once would have seemed perfect, but now looked like a crude imitation of happiness. Marcus, yes, maybe. He took a sip of water, feeling the icy liquid slide down his throat, but bringing no relief. My head was noisy with thoughts, with anger that was slowly but surely filling it. He could no longer look at his wife the same way as before. I couldn't believe her innocent joy. Savannah, Dad, will you pick us up from school tomorrow? We have training, and Mom said she will be busy. Marcus glanced at Emily. She calmly picked at her plate without raising her eyes. Marcus, of course, I'll take it. Emily, thank you, dear. I really need to get some things straightened out. He nodded without asking any further questions. Now every excuse she made seemed like a lie. Now he saw things that he had not noticed before. This dinner could have been 1 in 1,000, but now it has become the point of no return. Marcus looked at Emily and remembered how proud she always was of her work. She was a marketer and worked for a famous glossy magazine, where she was responsible for promoting luxury brands, collaborating with influential people, and organizing large-scale advertising campaigns. Her persuasion skills and charisma allowed her to achieve success. He remembered how he supported her when she spent nights preparing for important presentations, how he admired her confidence at business meetings where she flawlessly represented the magazine and its partners. San Diego, 18 years ago, Gallery of Modern Art. Marcus was not a big fan of painting, but the exhibition turned out to be unexpectedly interesting. He slowly walked along the canvases, examining them with polite curiosity, when someone's quiet but confident voice interrupted his thoughts. "Emily, do you also think that the author overestimated himself a little?" Marcus turned around and met her eyes. Brown, with a slight mischief, they literally glowed with curiosity. "Marcus, I'm not an art connoisseur at all, but something about this painting is strange." Emily laughed, taking a step closer. She looked elegant, but there was freedom and ease in her movements. "Emily, so that's who you are. A man who is not afraid to admit that he does not understand contemporary art. This is rare." They started a conversation, easily and naturally. As it turned out, Emily worked in marketing, promoting luxury brands. She came to the exhibition looking for new ideas for an article in the magazine with which she collaborated. Since then, their meetings began. First dates in cozy cafes, long walks around the evening city, conversations about life, dreams, and plans. Marcus, being an ambitious entrepreneur, was just starting his journey in business, and Emily was building a career. Their connection grew stronger. Marcus was fascinated by her confidence and ease. He admired how she could win over any interlocutor with one glance, how her voice, filled with soft confidence, carried her into the conversation. Their conversations lasted until late at night, and every time they said goodbye, they looked forward to a new meeting. They often argued about things that interested them. Marcus talked about technology and the prospects of their own business. Emily inspiredly shared her observations about trends in the world of fashion and art. He invited her to conferences and presentations, and she took him to private shows and cultural evenings, teaching him the intricacies of art. 2 years later, he proposed to her. That evening, he was especially nervous, and Emily seemed to understand everything, but remained silent, giving him space to act. "Marcus, Emily, I've never been good at long speeches, but you know what you mean to me. I can't imagine my life without you. Marry me." Emily looked at him, her eyes shining with emotion. There was a few seconds of silence, then she smiled and nodded. "Emily, yes, Marcus, yes." The wedding was modest, but filled with love and laughter. They dreamed of living together, of a house, of children. The first years were filled with harmony and happiness. They traveled, made plans, and rejoiced at each other's successes. Soon after their wedding, they had Travis, and a few years later, Savannah. Life gradually took shape. Marcus developed his business, and Emily successfully advanced in her career. They bought a house near the coast, where every evening they listened to the sound of the surf, holding each other's hands. But between work and family concerns, something began to change. Dinner at a common table has become a rarity. Emily stayed late at work more and more often, making excuses for important meetings. Marcus threw himself into the business, justifying himself by saying that he was doing it for the family. Marcus recalled those times with bitterness. Everything that seemed solid now looked like a house of cards. He wondered when exactly they had lost the spark that connected their hearts. Maybe when they became more colleagues than spouses, or at that moment when they stopped telling each other that they loved each other. Maybe they just stopped seeing each other the way they were in the beginning. He didn't have an answer, but a realization grew inside him. Something had gone wrong long before the betrayal. It didn't happen suddenly. It was a series of small missed moments that added up to a huge gap between them. But even this did not give her any right to do this to him. If she lacked something, she should have come and talked to him and not jumped into bed with someone else. Marcus understood that in this state he would be of no use at work. Vince began looking for information about Emily's lover, and he decided to take the children to their parents in order to come to their senses at least a little. He needed to break out of his routine, breathe some air, look at something real, the family in which he grew up. When he told Emily this over morning coffee, her reaction was predictable. "Emily, do you want to go away for a few days? Why didn't you tell me earlier? I have plans." "Marcus, I didn't ask permission, Emily. Just letting you know. The kids want to see their grandparents, and so do I. We all need to clear our air." Emily pressed her lips together, tapping her fingers on the rim of her cup. "Emily, well, I won't be able to go. I have work, meetings, you know." Marcus looked at her, noting how easily this refusal had come to her. A year ago, she would have argued, persuaded her to change plans, but now she simply brushed it off. "Marcus, of course, you always have things to do." Emily didn't answer, she just shrugged, got up from the table, and went into the bedroom. And he realized that he wasn't even surprised. Travis and Savannah were delighted. They always loved trips to visit their grandparents. A cozy home, the smell of freshly baked bread, warm hugs, and long evenings by the fireplace awaited them there. It was calm, stable, reliable, they're everything that Marcus needed so much now. "Savannah, Dad, will Grandpa fry the meat on the grill? He always makes the most delicious steaks." "Marcus, of course, baby. He is already waiting for you." "Travis, and we're going to play Monopoly. Last time, I almost won." Marcus grinned, looking in the rearview mirror at the excited faces of the children. "Marcus, almost doesn't count, son. But yes, I think Grandpa will want revenge." The road passed quickly. The children chatted non-stop, and Marcus, catching himself thinking that for the first time in a long time he felt a little lighter, tried to enjoy the moment. At some point, he realized how much he missed such simple moments of family happiness. He hadn't spent so much time with his children for a long time. Their parents, Thomas and Linda, met them at the door. The mother immediately pulled Travis and Savannah into a hug, and the father patted Marcus on the shoulder. "Thomas, you look tired, son. Did something happen?" "Marcus, let's talk later, father. Now I just want to rest." The house smelled of fresh bread and fried meat. Linda was busy in the kitchen, humming to herself, while her father fired up the grill in the backyard. The children immediately ran to help their grandmother, and Marcus, enjoying the moment, sat on the veranda with a glass of cold lemonade. They spent the evening like in the good old days, eating juicy meat from the grill, laughing at the children's jokes, playing board games. His father told old family stories, and his mother glanced at Marcus from time to time, as if she sensed that he was going through hard times. When the children went to bed, Thomas went out onto the terrace and beckoned Marcus to follow him. The air smelled of the coolness of the night and smoke from the grill. "Father, tell me, I see that something is wrong." Marcus was silent for a long time, looking at the stars. Then, finally, he exhaled. "Marcus, it's not like that, Father. I think Emily and I are in for some big changes." Thomas looked at him carefully without interrupting. He knew that his son would tell him when he was ready. In the meantime, he simply put his hand on his shoulder, letting him know that he was nearby. Marcus suddenly realized, no matter how his life turns out later, he has a family that will always be with him. And this gave me strength to move on. He took a deep breath and felt a little lighter for the first time in a long time. After spending a couple of days at his parents' house, Marcus felt like he needed to unwind even more. Over dinner, the father remembered that he had recently heard the news. Jason Miller, his old high school friend, had returned to his hometown with his family. This memory immediately aroused warm feelings in Marcus. They had not seen each other for several years, although they were once inseparable, spending time together in the backyard, playing baseball and dreaming about the future. Deciding not to postpone the meeting, Marcus decided to visit him. When Marcus arrived at Jason's house, his wife, Rachel, answered the door. Her face immediately changed when she saw Marcus. Fatigue and anxiety were visible in the eyes. Rachel, Marcus, what a surprise. Sorry, but Jason isn't home right now. Marcus frowned. There was a clear alarm in the woman's voice, and her heart beat a little faster. Marcus, is everything okay? Where is he? Rachel sighed heavily, invited him into the house, and closed the door. Rachel, he's in the hospital. He has heart problems. He needs urgent surgery. It happened so unexpectedly. Doctors say that he urgently needs a donor, otherwise the situation may worsen. These words hit Marcus like a bolt from the blue. Jason has always been a strong, active guy. It was difficult to imagine him in a hospital bed. Marcus, what hospital is he in now? Rachel, at the Central Clinic. He'll be glad to see you. He asked about you a couple of days ago. Without wasting any time, Marcus went to the hospital. In the corridor, he encountered a girl whose gaze seemed vaguely familiar to him. Tall, slender, with long blonde hair, she looked like an adult, but in her features he suddenly recognized the same girl who always ran after them in childhood. Lillian, Marcus, don't you remember me? Marcus, wait, Lillian, you're Jason's little sister. Lillian Carter smiled and nodded. The last time Marcus saw her was just a child, and now an adult, confident woman stood before him. Lillian, I've been here since the morning. Jason is holding on, but it's hard for him. We are all worried about him. He will be glad to see you. Marcus nodded and entered the room with Lillian. Jason looked tired, but his face lit up with a smile when he saw his friend. Jason, Marcus, old man, I didn't think I'd see you again. Marcus, well, no, you won't get rid of me so easily. They laughed, reminisced about their childhood, school pranks, and old times. Lillian listened to them with a smile, sometimes inserting her own memories. Marcus, remember, Jay, how you once told me that the test was postponed and I, happy, didn't even come to school? Jason, yes, and then the teacher made you write it alone after class. Admit it, it was brilliant. Marcus, brilliant. I almost ruined my grades. And your epic jump from the garage roof when you decided you could fly. Lillian, oh, I remember this day. He landed so awkwardly that he walked like an old man for a week. Jason, well, someone had to test the superhero theory. And you, Marcus, don't forget about that frog in your backpack. Marcus, yeah, how can you forget? I ran out of class screaming, and the teacher thought I had been bitten by a snake. I had to explain myself all day. The conversations calmed the situation a little, although there was anxiety in the air. But at this moment, they were again carefree children, laughing at past pranks, forgetting, at least for a while, about the difficulties of adult life. When it was time to leave, Marcus looked at his friend seriously. Marcus, I'll come again soon. Just hold on. If you need anything, financially or otherwise, just tell me. Jason smiled weakly. Jason, thank you, Mark. This means a lot to me. Leaving the hospital, Marcus felt filled with emotion. He couldn't leave his friend in this position. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how yet. A thought flashed through his head. Perhaps one of his acquaintances could help with finding funding or finding the necessary specialists. He decided to think about it when he returned to work. Marcus knew that he had several connections that could be useful in this situation. Lillian caught up with him at the exit, stopping next to him. Lillian, thank you for coming. He really needs something good now, something familiar, dear. You are one of the few who has been by his side from the very beginning. Marcus looked at her. She grew up, but her gaze remained as pure as in childhood. Marcus, I'll figure out how to help. Lillian smiled, and they went in different directions, each thinking about his own. Marcus returned to his parents' house with a heavy heart. He talked over dinner about Jason, his serious condition, and how Lillian had grown. Thomas listened intently, his brow furrowed, and Linda sighed quietly, shaking her head. Thomas, you know, son, I have a doctor friend, Dr. Richard Burke. He is one of the best cardiac surgeons in our state. Perhaps he can do something. Marcus, that would be great, Dad. I'll contact him tomorrow. Thomas thought for a moment, rubbing his chin. Thomas, if you want, I'll call him today. We once worked together on charity projects. I think he will not refuse me advice. Marcus, I would be very grateful, Dad. Jason really needs all the help he can get right now. While they were talking, the children were running around in the yard, squealing happily, trying to catch the dog, who was clearly enjoying their misfortunes. The laughter and joy in their voices reminded Marcus of times when he himself had been just as carefree. Linda, Lillian has always been a good girl, but her fate turned out to be difficult. Marcus looked at his mother with interest. Marcus, what do you mean? Linda, she has a little daughter, Sophie. She is 3 years old. Lillian is raising her alone. The child's father is some musician who fled the city with his band as soon as he learned about the pregnancy. He doesn't even pay child support. Marcus, damn. Is she coping? Linda, yes, she is very strong. Works 2 jobs to support Sophie. Of course, it's not easy for her, but she never complains. He just pulls everything on himself. Thomas sighed heavily as he watched his wife. Thomas, I've always respected Lillian. She's not one to give up. But it's a pity that she had to go through it alone. Marcus thought about it. He remembered how confident and calm Lillian had been in the hospital. He saw no bitterness or resentment in her eyes, only determination. She has always been like this, persistent, no matter what. Marcus, she's always been like this. I'll try to help her if she allows it. Linda smiled faintly, covering her son's hand with her warm palm. Linda, I think she won't mind. You have always been her big brother. Marcus nodded silently, looking out the window at the children playing. There were many decisions ahead, and the tasks only became more difficult. Emily enjoyed the rare opportunity to be at home alone, without fuss, without daily responsibilities. Her husband and children went to live with Marcus's parents, and she could finally spend her time the way she wanted. This time she was not going to be alone, she invited Graham. When he entered the house, his eyes immediately sparkled. He slowly ran his hand along the carved wooden railing of the staircase and ran his gaze over the expensive furnishings, which he clearly admired. Graham, I must admit, you have excellent taste. You live like a real queen. Emily smiled, enjoying his admiration. She knew that he was drawn not only to her, but also to this beautiful, prosperous world, to which he himself did not belong. Graham had always dreamed of more than he had, and now this opportunity was opening up to him. Emily, I just love comfort and beauty. Graham came closer, hugged her waist, gently touching her neck with his lips. Graham, and I love you, Em. When will we stop hiding? Emily sighed. She loved her family, but this life next to Marcus had long ago become routine. With Graham, it was different. He made her feel alive. Their connection began several months ago at a literary evening, where Marcus was unable to go due to work. That evening became unexpectedly exciting for her. She sat alone at the table, feeling a little awkward, surrounded by intellectuals and writers. Then Graham approached her, a young, charismatic man with a lively sparkle in his eyes. Graham, may I sit down? I feel like the two of us are equally bored here. She laughed, nodding. The conversation started easily. He talked about literature with such passion that Emily could not tear herself away. He showered her with compliments, calling her smart, sophisticated, inspiring. Emily, you say that as if I'm the heroine of a novel. Graham, or maybe you are my muse. That evening changed everything. She felt wanted, special. Unlike Marcus, who was always busy with work, Graham noticed her, listened to her, adored her. Now they were here, in her house, making plans for the future. They spent several hours in bed, enjoying each other's company. During breaks, Graham told her about his literary ambitions, about how he dreams of publishing a book that will shake the world. Graham, I already have a concept, and I know that with your support, I can succeed. Emily, you're talented. Graham, I believe in you. They discussed ideas. He read his sketches to her, and she expressed her thoughts with inspiration. She liked to feel like she was part of something meaningful, and not just a housewife and the wife of a successful businessman. Graham, when will you finally be able to leave him? Emily, it's not time yet, but I want it. With you, I feel alive. She didn't know how it would all end, but she understood. Divorce has consequences, its difficulties that will affect everyone. She couldn't just take off and leave, she needed to prepare. Everything must be planned correctly so as not to lose either the respect or the comfort to which she is accustomed. She ran her fingers over the blanket thoughtfully, watching Graham lie calmly next to her. Emily, it's not as easy as we would like. Graham, I understand. But we'll find a way, Em. The main thing is that you are happy. She nodded, already mentally forming a plan. She needed to make sure everything was under her control, so that leaving is not just an impulsive act, but a well-played game in which she will remain the winner. Vince sat in his office, his shirt collar unbuttoned and clutching a thick folder with a dossier in his hands. He knew that his friend Marcus had no idea how far Emily's betrayal had gone. The collected materials were exhaustive. Photographs, videos, messages, a detailed report on each date of this couple. The more he looked at all this, the more his fists clenched. He hired a private detective just a few days ago, and he worked with lightning speed. Vince never expected to receive evidence so quickly and in such volume. Bloody Graham Lawrence, this narcissistic writer who, apparently, sincerely considered himself the main character of a love story. Now Vince had not just suspicions, but irrefutable evidence of betrayal. Vince, damn, Mark, how did you not notice this? He himself became an accidental witness to one of the meetings of this couple when leaving the bar. He didn't even immediately realize that it was Emily in front of him, but when he looked at her in Graham's arms, he immediately pulled out his phone and took a few pictures. Then he still didn't know how to tell his friend about this. After all, there is a saying, what do they do with messengers who bring bad news? But he had no choice. He glanced over the detective's report. It listed the days, meeting places, amounts that Emily spent on her writer-lover, even the gifts that she gave him. All this undermined Vince. He knew Marcus too well. His friend lived by work, building a future for his family, and at this time his wife was spending his money on the ambitions of another man. This was not just betrayal, it was mockery. Vince, if I had remained silent, I would not have been able to calmly look you in the eyes, brother. It was he who sent an anonymous letter to Marcus a few days ago. But the video from Marcus' house wasn't enough. Vince wasn't someone who just watched from the sidelines. He wanted to make sure Marcus had every possible advantage. He dialed the detective's number again. Vince, can you get information about Graham? Where did he live? What did he do? Did he have any dirty secrets? Detective, we're already working on it. But even based on the first data, I can say that this guy is far from a saint. He owes money to several people. His writing career is more fiction than reality. He works on credit and is looking for someone to get through at whose expense. Vince, great. I need facts. If this bastard is hiding something, I will find it. He turned off the call and rubbed his face with his hands. This was just the first step. Warning Marcus is one thing. Another is to make sure that his friend does not come out of this situation as a loser. He sighed heavily, knowing that this was just the beginning. Time will tell how Marcus will cope with this. Marcus opened the door of the house and paused for a moment on the threshold. Inside, everything was the same as before: impeccable cleanliness, soft light, the smell of freshly brewed coffee. But something has changed. He has changed. He knew it, felt it with every cell of his body. The old Marcus believed in his family, in his wife, in stability, but now a completely different reality was unfolding before him. Emily walked out of the kitchen, giving him a quick glance. There was no embarrassment or excitement in her movements. Either she was too confident in her impunity, or she really believed that he knew nothing. Emily, you're early. How was your time with your parents? Marcus, okay. The children are delighted. How did you spend these days? Emily shrugged, looking away. She sat down at the table and pretended to study the phone screen. Emily, yes, as usual. Work, meetings, a lot of things to do. There wasn't even time to rest. Marcus nodded but didn't answer. He knew her words were lies. In his jacket pocket, there was already a flash drive with a video report that captured her every step over the past few days. He felt the weight of this truth, but was in no hurry to reveal his cards. Not yet. Later, in his office, he inserted the flash drive into his laptop. Frames began to flash on the screen. House. Graham walked through his door. Kisses, laughter, talking together, bed. Each image hit him like a hammer blow. He looked without looking away, without blinking. Pain squeezed my chest, but with it a cold, calculating anger was born. Marcus clenched his fists. Now he had the full picture, and along with this a dossier on Graham. He opened the folder and began to read. Financial debts, attempts to publish at someone else's expense, failed projects. A social parasite who skillfully clings to rich women. Such a person will never be independent. He is always looking for someone who will drag him along. Marcus, well, let's see how smart you are, Graham. The next day, he met with his lawyer, Nick Farrell, and the company's financier, Thomas Kent. They sat in the conference room where the largest deals of his business had once been signed. Now his personal plan was discussed here. Marcus, I need to do everything correctly, without unnecessary noise, but so that I still have an advantage. Nick leaned back in his chair, listening intently. Nick, are you sure about what you want to do? These things require caution. Thomas, if you have a plan, then we will find legal ways to implement it. The main thing is that all steps are verified. Marcus nodded, realizing that this conversation was just the beginning. He wasn't going to just break off the relationship and leave. He was going to emerge victorious. Memories took him back in time to the moment when he first risked investing money in his own business. It was a technology company, Randall Tech Solutions, specializing in enterprise software development and cybersecurity. The office was in San Diego, in a small rented space with peeling walls and thrift store furniture. Small office, sleepless nights, dozens of meetings. Then he was ready to work for days, just to prove that he was capable of building an empire. And he did it. He remembered those times when all he had was an idea and boundless faith in success. Banks were in no hurry to give loans, partners looked with distrust. There were already big players in the industry, and no one needed a new startup trying to make a name for itself. But he didn't give up. The first contract was concluded after 6 months of exhausting negotiations. The client was a medium-sized logistics company that needed reliable supply chain management software. Then another order, another one. Gradually, Randall Tech Solutions began to grow. Within 5 years, its clients were included in the Fortune 500 list, and the company's capitalization exceeded hundreds of millions of dollars. The first clients, the first contracts, he knew that he was taking risks, but his intuition never let him down. He built his business brick by brick, losing and gaining, but never stopping. He left his company, and it has now grown into one of San Diego's leading technology corporations. Randall Tech Solutions had over 1,000 employees, offices in 5 major cities, and annual sales exceeding $500 million. She was his creation, his pride, his life. Now he had to make the most difficult decision. Marcus sat in his office, sorting through documents. Between resolving issues of his personal life and planning his future actions, he did not forget about another important matter: Jason. His old friend needed surgery, and there was less and less time to think. He couldn't afford to sit idly by. Remembering the doctor his father recommended, he immediately dialed his number. Marcus, Dr. Burke. My name is Marcus Randall. My father, Thomas Randall, said you could help. Richard Burke. Thomas? Yes, of course, a wonderful person. What's the matter, Mr. Randall? Marcus briefly explained the situation, trying to speak calmly, but inside him everything was seething. He couldn't let Jason just waste away waiting for a miracle. Richard Burke. Yes, I am familiar with this case. Your friend is really in a difficult situation, but there is an option that will avoid a heart transplant. The method is complex, expensive, and requires a long recovery, but if he has the right care and support, he can live a normal life. Marcus, name the amount. Richard Burke, let's just say that not every insurance company is ready to cover such treatment. A full rehabilitation course will cost approximately $700,000. Marcus, consider that you already have the money. The doctor fell silent for a couple of seconds. Richard Burke, it's a noble thing to do, Mr. Randall. Your friend is lucky. Marcus, no, doctor, I'm lucky that I can afford it. After the call, he sat back in his chair and felt satisfied for the first time in a long time. Jason will live. That was the main thing. But there was one more thing left to do. He finally found out the name of the musician who abandoned Lillian and their little daughter. One Zach Harper, another unlucky rocker who failed to break into the big world but managed to leave behind problems. Marcus didn't believe in accidents. People like Harper always leave a mark somewhere. He dialed one of the numbers he rarely used. Marcus, I need a man. Name, Zach Harper. Find him and convince him that he must pay all alimony debts. The voice on the other end of the line was short and matter-of-fact. Understood. Do you need subtle methods or persuasive ones? Marcus, convincing enough for him to remember what responsibility is. No noise. In a couple of days, he will want to pay for everything to the last cent. Marcus hung up. No one was supposed to know that this was his doing. The main thing is that Lillian and Sophie get what they deserve. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and looked out the window. Lights were lit in the city, cars moved through the streets like streams of life, not noticing that somewhere in the shadows someone was deciding someone's fate. Today he helped those who deserved it. Tomorrow he will deal with those who deserve the opposite. Emily sat at the table of a small cafe in the city center, nervously tapping her fingernail on a porcelain cup of cappuccino. The lunch break was coming to an end, but she had no time for work. Graham sat opposite her, his brown eyes peering intently into her face, which was now filled with tension. Graham, we can't live like this anymore, Em. How long can you hide? I'm tired of being your secret. Emily sighed, leaning back in her chair. He was right, but the decision was much more difficult for her than she thought. Emily, you know it's not that simple. I have children. Graham, yes, but you can see them whenever you want. Maybe it would even be better for them to stay with Marcus. He always seemed more homely to me. Emily looked up sharply, feeling everything boiling inside. Emily, are you suggesting that I keep my children? Graham, that's not what I meant. It's just that we can finally live for ourselves. No permanent restrictions. Don't you want this? She didn't answer. The words stuck in my throat. She loved her children, but with Graham she felt truly alive. Doesn't she have the right to happiness? She saw how he impatiently tapped his fingers on the table, how his gaze became more and more demanding. He waited. I waited for her to finally make a choice. Emily, I can't just up and leave everything, Graham. It's not as easy as you think. Graham, easy? Yes, you're just afraid. You are afraid to leave your comfort zone. You are afraid to admit that your marriage has been dead for a long time. She nervously tucked her hair behind her ear and took a sip of coffee. He was already cold. So is her marriage, as are her feelings for Marcus. Later that day, Emily sat in a spacious office opposite a woman in her 40s with cool blue eyes and impeccably styled hair. A black leather folder lay on the table, and the lawyer slowly flipped through the pages of documents, looking expectantly at Emily. Lawyer, so you want to divorce your husband and take your share of the property? Emily nodded. Emily, yes, but I want to do this peacefully. No scandals. I'm just tired. The lawyer studied her with her eyes, then slowly folded her hands on the table. Lawyer, you need to convince him that this is your personal decision, that you have no one else. If he finds out about his lover, the process will become more complicated. But if you agree peacefully, you will get half of the joint property. He is a reasonable person and is unlikely to resist if he understands that the children will stay with him. Men usually agree to division more easily if they feel that a fight is not being forced on them. Emily thought about it. This was the perfect option. If everything goes smoothly, She will leave without loss. She won't even need to drag the children along with her. Marcus will provide for them, and she will be able to visit them whenever she wants. She would maintain her financial stability, and Graham, he would be able to continue his writing career without worrying about money. Lawyer, I will prepare the documents, but in the meantime, you should think about how to present this to Marcus. The main thing is not to give him any reason to doubt. Emily nodded. She will arrange everything. After all, she has a future, and it starts now. She stood up, straightened her expensive blouse, and headed towards the exit. Graham was waiting for her on the street, looking impatiently at the phone screen. He raised his head when she left, and it was clear from his gaze that he wanted an answer. No final answer. Graham, well, what did the lawyer say? Emily, anything is possible. If I do everything right, I will leave without loss. Graham chuckled. Graham, so it's time to end the performance. She nodded, but somewhere deep inside, she felt a slight uneasiness. So far, everything has gone according to plan, but is she ready for what comes next? Marcus sat in the living room, holding his phone. The screen lit up with a new message. Lillian, thank you, I know it's you. Jason's surgery is scheduled for May 31st. Marcus felt a subtle smile touch his lips. He didn't do it out of gratitude, but it was nice to know that his action was appreciated. Marcus, this is the least I can do. I hope everything goes well. He sent a message and leaned back on the couch when he heard footsteps. Emily walked into the living room holding documents in her hands. She noticed his expression and narrowed her eyes. Emily, who are you chatting with so animatedly? Marcus looked up at her coldly. Marcus, what difference does it make to you? She hesitated for a moment, but then took a deep breath, as if gathering her courage. Her fingers tightened around the document folder, and she took a step closer. Emily, we need to talk. Marcus, oh, now we need to talk. Where was this moment before, Emily? She looked away, but pulled herself together. Emily, I thought for a long time, I don't want to turn this into a scandal. I still respect you, Mark, and I love you, but not like before. We moved away from each other, and I think it's better for us to go our separate ways. Marcus, separate. What about the children? Or have they also distanced? Emily hesitated for a moment. Emily, they will be with you. I can see them whenever I want. Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. Marcus, so you just give everything up? Home, family, children. Why? Have you found someone? Emily looked up sharply. Emily, no, this is not because of someone. It's just because of us. We have become strangers. Marcus looked at her for a long time and carefully. He saw her nervously fingering the hem of her blouse. Lie. He knew her too well. Marcus, are you sure, Emily? Are you sure you're telling me the whole truth? She looked away. Emily, it's hard to explain, Mark. Marcus, oh, I think I can totally understand if you just tell me the truth. She didn't answer, and the silence in the room became almost deafening. Marcus took the documents and opened the first page. He skimmed the text. Everything looked smooth. No accusations, no demands to leave her children. Just a standard divorce by mutual consent. No hysterics, no tears. He looked up. Marcus, you've already decided everything. Emily, yes, I think it will be better for everyone. Marcus looked at her for a long time, then slowly took the pen and signed it. The papers slammed shut with a soft bang. Emily put the documents in her bag, as if afraid that he would change his mind. A tense silence hung in the room. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but thought better of it. Emily, I'll pack my things. I'll stay in a motel for now, until I find suitable housing. Marcus, do as you see fit. When her suitcase was already at the door, she froze, turning to him. Something in her eyes said that she was waiting for a reaction from him. At least some. Perhaps she hoped that he would stop her. But he just watched. Emily, you won't say anything at all. Marcus slowly rose from the sofa, walked over to the table, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and only then answered. Marcus, what do you want to hear, Emily? What will I miss? Why does it hurt me? What do I want you to stay? She was silent. He took a sip of whiskey and added, Marcus, you've already made your choice. Don't expect me to beg you to change your mind. She pursed her lips, grabbed her suitcase, and walked out, slamming the door. In the evening, she was no longer in the house. Marcus stood at the window with a glass in his hands, watching her car disappear around the bend. Marcus, well, Emily, welcome to your new life. He slowly took another sip of whiskey, then set the glass down on the table and ran his hands over his face. My head was buzzing, not from alcohol, from thoughts. He closed his eyes, leaned back in his chair, and tried to put them in order. How to tell the children? How do you explain to them that their mother left, but not because they did something wrong? That it's not their fault? He didn't want Savannah and Travis to feel abandoned. Marcus, damn. He pinched the bridge of his nose. The children adored Emily, especially Savannah, who always tried to spend as much time with her as possible. Travis was old enough to understand, but how would he accept it? How will he react when he realizes that their family is no longer the same? There were few options. Either say everything directly and honestly, or disguise the truth. He wasn't going to tell the children that their mother had traded them for another man. It would be too cruel. But I didn't want to lie either. Marcus, we'll have to find the right words. He took out his phone, opened his notes, and began typing phrases, but every sentence seemed dry and unnatural to him. He knew one thing: tomorrow morning, when the children woke up and saw that their mother was gone, they would ask questions, and he must be ready for them. Morning conversation with children. Marcus woke up early, but did not get out of bed for a long time. He knew that a difficult conversation awaited him ahead, and he mentally prepared for it. My thoughts were confused. Many options were spinning in my head: how to say, what words to choose so as not to cause the children even more pain. But the more he thought about it, the more difficult it became. When he heard Savannah running down the hall and Travis slowly making his way downstairs, he took a deep breath and headed towards the kitchen. The heart beat dull and heavy, as if warning about how painful this conversation would be. Savannah was already sitting at the table, dangling her spoon in her bowl of cereal. She looked confused, but did not yet realize the scale of what had happened. Savannah, Dad, where's Mom? Marcus felt his insides clench, but he remained calm. He knew that this question was inevitable and had prepared an answer in advance, but when it came from his daughter's lips, the words were much more difficult for him than he had expected. Marcus, Mom, left. Savannah, where? Why didn't she wake us up? She always kisses me before school. Travis sat down opposite his sister, but didn't say a word, just carefully watched the conversation. There was no surprise in his gaze, rather a tired understanding. Marcus, she decided that we need to live separately. It's her choice. Savannah frowned, put down her spoon, and glared at her father. Savannah, but we are family. How is this separate? Is this for how long? Marcus, yes, baby, for a long time. Savannah, but why? Did something happen? Did you have a fight? Will she come back? Marcus, no, he won't come back. Savannah, is it because of us? Did we do something wrong? Marcus quickly leaned towards her, taking her small hands in his. Marcus, no, under no circumstances. It's not your fault. Mom just decided to go a different route. Savannah seemed confused and her eyes began to sparkle. She tried to cope with the surging emotions, but too many questions remained unanswered. Savannah, but I want to go to my mother. Marcus, you will be able to see her, but now you will live with me. Savannah hung her head, trying to hold back her tears, and then jumped out of her chair and ran to her room. Her quick steps echoed down the stairs. Marcus exhaled heavily and looked at Travis. He was silent, looking into the empty cup. Travis, I don't need to explain anything. Marcus raised his eyebrows in surprise. The son's voice sounded too firm for his age. Travis, I heard everything myself yesterday. Sorry for eavesdropping. Marcus felt a bitterness rise in his throat. He didn't know what to answer. There was understanding in Travis's eyes, but also pain, awareness of betrayal. Travis, Dad, she left us. She just left. Marcus didn't say anything, but walked over and hugged his son tightly. He did not pull away, on the contrary, he squeezed him tightly in response, as if trying to find at least some support in this gesture. Marcus, we can handle this, Trav. Travis nodded but remained silent. Emotions were raging inside him, but he decided not to show them. They stood there for a few minutes before Marcus tapped him on the shoulder. Marcus, let's have breakfast. We both need a little strength. Travis nodded and returned to his seat. They ate in silence, but now there was something new between them, the understanding that from now on they were together against the whole world. Marcus understood that the children needed time to process what had happened, but he didn't want them to dwell on the pain. Therefore, while their wounds were still fresh, he decided to take them to where it was always warm and calm to his parents. Thomas and Linda's home was always the place where the children felt happy. Marcus knew that there they could at least forget about what had happened for a while. Savannah immediately perked up when she learned that they were going to visit her grandparents. But Travis remained silent. He looked out the car window as they drove and didn't ask questions. Marcus knew his son needed time and did not rush him. When they arrived, Thomas and Linda greeted them with warm smiles, but when they saw the look on their son's face, they quickly realized what had happened. Thomas, you're just in time. I just fired up the grill. How about steaks? Savannah, can I have some BBQ sauce? Linda, of course, honey. In the meantime, come help me in the kitchen. When the children disappeared into the house, Thomas put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. Thomas, well, lay it out. Marcus told them everything, leaving out no details. Linda sighed and Thomas shook his head heavily. Thomas, I always felt that she didn't fully appreciate you, son. Marcus, it doesn't matter anymore. The main thing is the children. At that moment, the phone rang. Marcus looked at the screen. Vince, everything is ready, brother. The divorce date and the judge's decision are set in a month. Marcus, quickly. Vince, you know, I don't like to drag things out. You'll be a free man in 4 weeks. Marcus didn't answer. He felt no relief, only emptiness. He went out onto the porch, lit a cigarette, and looked into the distance for several minutes, thinking about how life could change so dramatically. Later, he took the children to visit Jason's family. They spent the day with Rachel, her twins, Lillian, and little Sophie. The children ran around the yard, laughing as if nothing had happened. This was exactly what they needed. Savannah hit it off with the girls, and they had a tea party with toys, and Travis, somewhat perked up, played basketball with one of the twins. Marcus watched from the porch until Lillian approached him, holding a cup of coffee. Lillian, it's good that they can forget at least for a while. Marcus, yes, I would like it to always be like this. Lillian sat down next to her, and for several minutes they were simply silent, watching the children. Then Marcus looked at her and asked, Marcus, how are you coping, Lily? She shrugged and took a sip of coffee. Lillian, day after day. Sophie makes everything easier. I can't afford to break. Marcus nodded respectfully. He knew Lillian was strong, but being a single mother wasn't easy. As the sun began to set, Marcus went to see Jason at the hospital. A muffled silence reigned in the room, broken only by the measured squeaking of medical equipment. Jason looked tired, but there was still a glint of stubbornness in his eyes. Marcus sat down next to his bed, took his friend's hand, and squeezed it. Marcus, you're doing great, but I know how hard it is for you. Jason chuckled, his lips twitching ever so slightly. Jason, you know me, Mark. I'm not one to give up. Only the body sometimes thinks differently. Marcus, and don't even think about giving up. We've been through so much, you can't leave everything halfway. Jason, I'm not going to. But if suddenly, Marcus interrupted him by squeezing his hand tighter. Marcus, no ifs. But know that if necessary, I will take care of Rachel and the children. I promise. Jason looked at his friend for a long time, his eyes slightly moist. Then he nodded weakly and exhaled. Jason, thanks, brother. This means a lot to me. They were silent for several minutes. Marcus just sat there, watching his friend close his eyes, trying to get some rest. When the nurse entered the room, he knew it was time to leave. Standing up, he patted Jason on the shoulder. Marcus, I'll come by tomorrow. Rest. Jason, try it too. I see how driven you are. Marcus chuckled. Marcus, rest is not for me, old man. Jason just shook his head, closing his eyes. And Marcus, leaving the ward, felt that their conversation gave him even more determination. Emily was sitting on the spacious balcony of her rented apartment, holding a glass of wine in her hands. Graham walked around the room, excitedly waving his arms, as if he was painting a picture of their future life. He was on the rise, inspired, confident that now they could finally be happy. Graham, imagine, our house. White, 2-story, with large windows and a cozy terrace. Somewhere in a quiet area, away from the bustle of the city. I will write, and you. You can finally live for yourself. Emily looked at him and tried to share his enthusiasm. She smiled, but inside she was worried. Will it really be that simple? Remembering how easily Marcus signed the documents, how quickly their family life was crossed out, she felt a strange emptiness. She made a choice, but was it the right one? Graham, when things calm down, you can help me promote the book. You know it's important to have connections in this world. Emily frowned. Emily, you understand that now is not the time. I haven't even arranged my life yet. Graham sat down opposite, extended his hand, and covered hers with his own. Graham, of course I understand. But we must think about the future. You said that you have useful contacts in publishing houses. Emily sighed heavily. Emily, let's not now, okay? I need time. She tried to speak calmly, but everything inside was shrinking. She missed the children. No matter how much she told herself that this was right, that it would be better, her heart broke. Over the weekend, she couldn't stand it anymore and called Marcus. She wanted to meet the children and wanted to hear their voices. But Travis answered the phone instead. His voice was cold and hard. Travis, don't call us. We can cope without you. Emily felt the ground disappear from under her feet. Emily, Trav, please, I just want to hear from you. Travis, no need. You have made your choice. The call ended. Emily clutched the phone in her hand, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. She sat in silence for a long time until Graham noticed her condition. Graham, what happened? Emily, Travis, he doesn't want to talk to me. Graham sat down next to her and put his arm around her shoulders. Graham, baby, they're angry now. This is a childish insult. They are still small and do not understand what is happening. Emily, but they are my children, Graham. I can't lose them. Graham, you won't lose them. Give them time. Everything will get better later. Emily sobbed into his shoulder. Deep down, she hoped he was right, but the fear of loss burned her from the inside. Graham ran his hand through her hair and looked into her eyes. Graham, look, you made the right choice. You're unhappy with Marcus, and so is he. All that's left is to just wait for the emotions to subside. Believe me, in a year they will come to you. Emily, what if not? What if they turn their backs on me forever? Graham, then you will live your life. You have me. You are not alone. She nodded, but the pain was raging inside. She gave up her family for the dream of a new life. A month has passed since the documents were signed. This month dragged on differently for everyone involved in this story. Some tried to move on with their lives, some suffered alone, and some made new plans. No one could turn back time, but everyone took steps into their future, some confidently and others stumbling. Marcus was completely immersed in caring for the children and working. He did everything he could to make Travis and Savannah feel safe, but he knew they were still processing what happened. The days dragged on monotonously. Work, school, home. In the evenings, Marcus tried to maintain the usual family traditions, having dinner together, playing board games. However, the mood of the children was different. Savannah tried to remain optimistic, but sadness appeared more and more often in her eyes. Travis, on the contrary, became even more closed, and Marcus could not break through his silence. One evening, as the three of them were sitting by the fireplace, Savannah suddenly raised her head and asked, "Savannah, Dad, will Mom come back?" Marcus took a deep breath. He didn't want to lie, but he also couldn't cause his daughter unnecessary pain. "Marcus, she can see you whenever she wants, but she won't live with us anymore." Savannah, "But why? Doesn't she love us anymore?" Marcus, "Of course he does. It's just that adults sometimes make decisions that are not always clear to children." Travis, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stood up. "Travis, no, Dad. She didn't just make a decision. She left us, and I don't need her to see us. I'm fine without her." Marcus looked at his son with concern, but did not argue. Travis needed time. He felt that a whole storm of emotions was boiling inside the teenager, but it was impossible to force him to speak. Emily tried to arrange her new life, but everything turned out to be more difficult than she thought. Graham, who a month ago had been full of enthusiasm, was now becoming increasingly irritated and demanding. "Graham, did you find out about my manuscript? We said that you would help me promote it." Emily, "Graham, I can't do this yet. I have enough of my own problems." Graham, "Emily, I've been waiting for this opportunity for years. You don't want your new man to be a loser, right?" She felt cold inside. These words sounded unpleasant. "Emily, you speak as if I owe you something." Graham, "No, it's just. It seemed to me that we were building a new life together." Emily turned away. She suddenly realized that the new life was not at all what she had imagined it to be. She missed the children. She called them, but Travis either didn't pick up or answered in monosyllables. Savannah spoke to her, but the conversations were strained. Things weren't going as she had hoped. At some point, Emily began to notice changes in Graham. He became irritable and at times dismissive. At first, she chalked it up to stress, but over time she realized he began to perceive her not as a partner, but as a resource. Meanwhile, Vince continued to work on Marcus' plan. "Vince, everything is going according to schedule. Are you sure you want to do it this way?" Marcus, "Absolutely." Vince chuckled. "Vince, well, then get ready. In a month, you will be officially free." Marcus didn't answer, just nodded slowly. He knew that there were still many surprises ahead, but now he was ready for them. This month has changed everyone. Someone became stronger, someone realized the price of their mistakes. But one thing was clear: the past could not be returned. A new life awaited them, and each was ready to meet it in their own way. The court waiting room was cold and impersonal. Light walls, simple wooden benches, the smell of paper and coffee from the machine. Marcus sat calmly with his arms crossed over his chest. Next to him, Vince was casually flipping through a document, and financier Thomas Kent was thoughtfully adjusting the cuffs of an expensive suit. The atmosphere in the room was tense, as if before a thunderstorm. Marcus felt the gaze. He knew who was looking at him. Emily sat opposite. She looked sad, lost. Not at all the same woman who a month ago so confidently told him that divorce was the best solution. Her lips were tightly compressed. Her fingers nervously kneaded the hem of her jacket. She tried to maintain composure, but her eyes betrayed her inner panic. Graham sat next to her. Pompous, smug, he could barely hide his joy. His hand rested on Emily's knee, his fingers twitching in anticipation. He glanced around furtively, enjoying the moment. Marcus saw Graham giving him curious glances from time to time. Apparently, he wanted to make sure that Emily's husband noticed him. But Marcus did not give him such pleasure. He pretended that he didn't know who he was. Suddenly, the secretary's voice rang out. "Randall's, come into the courtroom." Marcus stood up and straightened his jacket. Vince glanced at him quickly and nodded approvingly. She and Thomas followed him, slowly, confidently. Emily stood up with a delay, as if her legs had suddenly become weak. Graham put his arm around her waist and quickly whispered something in her ear. She did not answer, but allowed herself to be directed into the hall. The judge, a man of about 60, was already sitting at the massive oak table. He looked at the documents, then looked up at the former spouses. The divorce case between Marcus Randall and Emily Randall. Since both parties agree to the divorce, there is no point in delaying it. The judge's voice was calm but firm. He leafed through the documents and read out the formal provisions. Emily nodded. Graham tried his best to look serious, but there was a glee in his eyes. It seemed that he was the only one in this room who was looking forward to this moment. It's a question of property, the judge continued. According to the agreement, the main house remains at the disposal of the father since he will live with the children. Emily Randall receives a car and cash compensation in the amount of. The judge paused, looked at the papers, then looked back at Emily. In the amount of $10,000. There was silence in the hall. Emily blinked as if she didn't believe what she was hearing. Emily, sorry, but what? Where is the rest? Our company. The judge put the folder aside and folded his hands in front of him. Miss Randall, your information is out of date. According to official data, your ex-husband's company was declared bankrupt yesterday. Today, this news has already been published in business publications. Graham turned sharply to Emily, his face distorted. Graham, what? Emily looked at Marcus in panic. He sat calmly, without a single emotion on his face. Her breathing became ragged, and her palms grew cold. This couldn't be true. Emily, but it's impossible. Marcus bowed his head slightly and calmly answered. Marcus, anything is possible, Emily. Graham clenched his fists. Graham, this is some kind of mistake. He's just hiding assets. The judge gave him a stern look. Mr. Lawrence, I ask you to refrain from commenting. The bankruptcy data was confirmed by financial authorities. The trial has ended. Emily let out a choked breath. She barely heard the sound of the hammer, sealing her defeat. Everything she had counted on crumbled to dust. She was left with a car and a measly $10,000. Graham removed his hand from her knee. Now his face expressed not triumph, but anger. Marcus slowly stood up, buttoned his jacket, and headed towards the exit. Vince and Thomas followed, leaving Emily sitting there in confusion. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. As Marcus passed by, he slowed down for a second and, without looking at her, said, Marcus, I hope it was worth it. Emily felt the world crumble beneath her feet. Marcus sat in his house, where once life was seething everywhere, but now the silence of loss hovered in every corner. 15 years of marriage have passed behind these walls, 15 years of memories, laughter and tears, joy and bitterness. Today, everything seemed like an illusion, a shadow of a past hope lost in a whirlwind of change. His mind increasingly returned to the pompous speeches of the great writer Graham Lawrence, who, like a skilled puppet player, played the role of savior in someone else's life, leading his wife aside, leaving Marcus with questions about where the years they had built together had disappeared. He felt a fire inside, not so much anger at Emily, but at himself for failing to notice how his marriage was slowly falling apart, how an indestructible fortress was collapsing from the inside. His gaze wandered over familiar objects, and each object reminded him of happy moments that now seemed like an unattainable dream. How could he allow this worthless scoundrel to destroy what took years to build? But the most important thing now was not what was left in the past, but what was to come, the future of his children. With a heavy heart, but with determination, Marcus stood up from the couch and took a deep breath, trying to collect his thoughts. He walked into the living room, where, despite his attempts to act normal, his children, Travis and Savannah, seemed empty, like small reflections of his own pain and weariness. Shadows of disappointment and misunderstanding flashed in their eyes, and Marcus felt that fate had not yet forgiven them for this loss. Marcus spoke, trying to put hope into every word, even if his voice trembled from internal emotions. Guys, I have a proposal. How about a great change your place of residence? Savannah, with her big, curious eyes, immediately asked the question. Where, Dad? Marcus paused, and his thoughts went back to those unforgettable moments when the house was filled with laughter and love. He knew that change was inevitable, and now the only thing left was to move forward, leaving behind all the bitter memories. To my grandparents, he continued, trying to speak confidently despite his internal hesitation. Forever. Travis was silent, his gaze directed downwards, as if he was trying to find answers in the darkness of the floor. He nodded, although there was no joy in his movement, only quiet resignation, as if in this agreement he was trying to drown the pain of past years. "What about this house?" he asked quietly, as if asking a question that had been tormenting him for too long. Marcus paused again, searching for words that might ease the pain of his loss a little. He knew that the house was a symbol of everything they had lost, and it was difficult to part with it. "We'll sell it," he said, trying to put warmth and hope into his voice. "This house is no longer ours. We need a new life, a new page where we can start all over again without looking back at the past." Savannah's gaze froze for a moment, and she said quietly, "But, Mom, she'll come back for us, won't she?" Marcus paused again, realizing that this question was not just a child's curiosity, but a reflection of the deep emotional wounds left by the divorce. He knelt down next to his daughter so that their eyes met, and holding back the pain, said, "You can always see Mom if you want, Savvy." Savannah thought for a moment, her face reflecting the internal struggle between not wanting to let go of the past and hoping for a better future. Finally, she nodded, realizing that trying to preserve the past would only make the pain worse, and ahead was the opportunity to heal the wounds. Packing for the move took several days, filled with quiet bustle and memories that had to be let go in order to open the door to a new stage of life. Packing took several days. Vince helped with the sale of the property, and financier Thomas Kent helped to wisely hide the remaining money. The company could not be saved, but Marcus's money was safe. He was not left empty-handed, unlike those who wanted to leave him with nothing. When everything was ready, they looked around the house for the last time. "Travis, honestly, I'm glad we're leaving." Marcus looked at his son. There was no anger or pain in his voice, only fatigue. "Marcus, me too, son, me too." A new stage began in the warm light of the morning sun as Marcus, holding Savannah and Travis's hands, walked along the familiar road to his parents' house. After all the dramatic events of the past months, life seemed about to take on a new form, albeit with the indelible scars of the past, but with a spark of hope for a better future. Thomas and Linda's home greeted them with comfort and warmth, so familiar and at the same time so far from the chaos that overtook Marcus in recent weeks. In the living room, where the walls were saturated with childhood memories, Marcus sat next to his father. Thomas, sitting in an old but favorite chair, looked attentively at his son. His gaze was soulful, as if he was trying to understand the path his son had taken and what sacrifices had to be made to get out of the labyrinth of pain and betrayal. "Marcus, Dad, I have to tell you how I managed to get out of this ruined story." Thomas nodded, inviting his son to continue. With trepidation and without hiding his inner feelings, Marcus began to remember the last weeks, when friends, allies, and loyal comrades extended a helping hand to him. "Marcus, I knew that divorce was just the beginning, that not only my soul was at stake, but also the future of my children. When all seemed lost, I found support in Vince, my longtime friend, and financial genius Thomas Kent. Together, we developed a cunning plan to preserve everything that I had built over the years and not let this storm destroy our lives." Marcus told how, at the very last moment, he managed to crank out an operation to declare the company bankrupt, a fraud that was so lightning fast that the financial flows remaining in the company were promptly hidden behind many fictitious transactions. "Marcus, it was a risk, but I couldn't let my children end up homeless and without a livelihood." He remembered the deafening calls, the stern faces of the bankers, the nights when every new document could be the last straw in the scales. He didn't just protect his property, he protected his future. Thomas listened attentively, occasionally interrupting with a short, encouraging word. He understood. His son had to go through trials that could break even the strongest person. "Marcus, I lost a lot, but I did not lose my honor, my friends, and, most importantly, my children." Thomas exhaled heavily, clutching a glass of whiskey in his hand. Tears flashed in his eyes, not from sadness, but from pride. "Thomas, you did it, son. You didn't let this world break you, and I'm proud of you." Marcus looked at his father and, for the first time in a long time, felt truly confident. Yes, his life collapsed, but he survived. Now he knew that a new path awaited him ahead, and this time he would not allow anyone to destroy it. Thomas, so what now? What are your plans? Marcus smiled, leaning back in his chair. He felt exhausted, but not broken. Marcus, first of all, I want to spend time with the children. No stress, no running around. Just be with them. Thomas nodded approvingly. Thomas, that's right. Family is the main thing. Marcus, and then, I'm not going to sit idly by. I have some ideas, perhaps something new. Thomas, you know that I'm always there, son. Marcus smiled and squeezed his father's shoulder. This was what he needed to hear. Time passed, and along with new hopes came a new challenge: Jason's operation. An old friend of Marcus, who so needed saving, ended up in the hospital, and his fate depended on the hands of experienced surgeons. Jason, battling serious heart problems, waited in the wings as a tense silence reigned in the corridor of the ward. Everyone who was here understood that the outcome of the operation would change their lives. Those who cared about Jason gathered in a small waiting room. Among them was Rachel, his wife, whose eyes, reddened from sleepless nights, expressed a mixture of anxiety and determination. She could not allow herself to break, although she internally felt how the world was collapsing. Lily, Jason's sister and Marcus's close friend, sat nearby, her hands clasped together, her nails nervously digging into her palms. Marcus, tightly clutching a cup of cold coffee, was silent, but his tense shoulders betrayed his excitement. Conversations in the hall were quiet, almost whispers. Each tried to console the other, reminding them that together they could weather any storm. Marcus, Jason is a fighter. He can handle it. We must believe in this. Rachel, I believe it. It's just. Sometimes fear is stronger than faith. Marcus squeezed her hand. Marcus, it's normal to be afraid, but we are close, and he knows it. Time passed slowly, and the operation seemed to last forever. The doctor leading the operation, Dr. Edward Stanton, was a famous heart surgeon, and everyone knew that Jason was in the best hands. But even this did not relieve the anxiety gnawing from within. The noise of medical devices, the measured heartbeat on the monitors, and quiet words of support created an atmosphere of expectation and faith. No one moved until at some point the operating room door opened. The surgeon took a few steps forward, took off his mask, and wiped his forehead tiredly. His gaze was serious but calm. Dr. Stanton, the operation was successful. Now it all depends on how he recovers. Rachel, unable to restrain herself, covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shook, but these were tears of relief. Lily exhaled, allowing herself to relax for the first time in a long time. Marcus lowered his head and just sat in silence for a few seconds before he said quietly, Marcus, thank you, Doctor. Dr. Stanton nodded, but then, looking at Rachel, added, Dr. Stanton, the first days after surgery are critical. We need to monitor the body's reaction, but I have a good feeling. Rachel, can I see him? Dr. Stanton, he's under anesthesia for now, but in a couple of hours he will be transferred to the ward. You can be with him. Lily, this is a miracle. Marcus, this is the result of the work of the best specialists and his strength. This day showed them all that hope is stronger than fear, and true friends remain close even in the most difficult times. Meanwhile, Marcus' children found solace in each other's company. Savannah, with her great curiosity, and Travis, accustomed to silently accepting fate, gradually began to grow closer, as if their shared pain brought them closer together than ever before. They played together in the yard, invented new games, and told each other stories in which the good heroes, who knew how to find joy even in the most difficult circumstances, always won. Savannah, do you remember how Mom told us stories before bed? I want to come up with my own. Travis, come on. Only without princes and magic wands. Let there be someone like Dad strong, but not a sorcerer. Savannah smiled. A light flashed in her eyes that had not been there for a long time. Savannah, okay, Then my hero will find a way out of even the most difficult situations. Like Dad. Travis nodded. He liked this idea. He didn't say it out loud, but Marcus had always been more than just a father to him. He was an example of how to hold on when the whole world is falling apart. Time passed, and new days brought with them not only trials, but also small joys. Marcus recalled how before, during family dinners, the laughter sounded so sincere and dreamed of the day when everything would get better. Now, having gathered together with his parents, he felt that the future, although burdened with the burden of the past, still opened up new opportunities for them. In the evenings, at the family table, while Thomas told old stories and Linda quietly glanced at the children, Marcus shared with them how he managed to cope with the storm of divorce, how friends and family helped him keep everything important. Thomas, I knew you'd get out of it, son. You are stubborn, just like your mother. But to be honest, I was worried. Marcus, I myself wasn't sure that everything would work out. There were moments when it seemed that I would lose not only the company, but also the children themselves. But thanks to Vince and Thomas Kent, everything turned out differently. Meanwhile, for Emily, everything was going according to a different scenario, a scenario in which there was no longer room for illusions and sweet promises. Graham, having learned that she was left without money, moved away from her, no longer wanting to be associated with a man who had lost everything that could give him a sense of confidence and status. Emily, Graham, you said that we would get through this together. You promised. Graham, did you promise? Emily, let's be honest. I didn't sign up for a life of poverty. Her heart sank. She looked at him with wide eyes, but there was not an iota of regret in his face, only indifference and slight irritation. Emily, are you just going to leave? After everything we've planned? Graham, your plans were good as long as you had access to Marcus's money. Now I have other plans. He turned around and walked out the door, leaving her in complete silence. For Emily, days of loneliness and disappointment came. She tried to find solace in work, but every new call, every empty meeting only reminded her that her dreams, once so bright, were now dimming like the fire in a forgotten lantern. Her eyes had long since lost the sparkle that once illuminated her face. She sat alone in a small apartment where the walls seemed cold and unwelcoming, and every day was similar to the previous one. Only rare memories of old times ran through her memory moments when she was confident in the future, when she dreamed of a new life and believed in her ability to change the world around her. But now all these dreams have dissipated, leaving behind only a bitter feeling of loss. Emily turned on her phone and looked at the screen. Not a single message, not a single call. Emily whispers, Travis, Savannah. But the children didn't call. She dialed Travis's number, but he hung up. Tears flowed down her cheeks. The voice in my head kept repeating one thing. You yourself chose this path. And now she had to learn to live with this choice. The years pass unnoticed, taking with them the pain of loss and betrayal, bringing new hopes and unexpected twists of fate. 10 years ago, Marcus Randall closed the door of his past behind him, leaving behind the pain of betrayal, the severity of divorce, and the chaos of a collapsed life. Then it seemed to him that the future was an unknown and frightening road, where he would have to take every step, gathering all his will into a fist. But today, a whole decade after high-profile legal battles and the collapse of the old world, he stood on the porch of his parents' house with a slight smile on his lips, looked at the cloudless sky, and felt that for the first time in a long time he was breathing deeply. After a divorce and bankruptcy, which turned out to be a clever ruse, Marcus and his children settled with Thomas and Linda, his parents, in their cozy home near the coast. Gradually, he recovered from the emotional shock, and the children Travis and Savannah began to come to their senses, learning to live in new conditions. His parents' house, where Marcus once felt like a boy, has become a safe haven for the whole family. It was here that he found the strength to build a new company, stubbornly turning shocks into new opportunities. Long-standing connections and the irreplaceable support of loyal people like Vince and Thomas Kent helped keep them afloat. Travis was 14 at the time of the divorce. Now 24, he has transformed himself from an introverted teenager into a driven young man in 10 years. His early resentment towards his mother and worries about the breakup of his family left their mark, but he developed in himself the traits characteristic of an independent and strong person. At the same time, he retained kindness and sensitivity to the feelings of others, because everything he saw and experienced in childhood made him more sensitive to the pain of others. Travis studied engineering and then, inspired by the development of technology, moved into the field of artificial intelligence. He interned at his father's company, Randall Data Shield, but Marcus didn't want his son to use only his name and connections. Therefore, Travis himself passed the competitive selection and achieved recognition among programmer analysts. Now he worked on creating data protection systems using neural networks and made progress that made his father endlessly proud. Savannah, who was 11 at the time of the dramatic events, is now almost an adult woman at 21, but she still had a cheerful, smiling girl who remembered the taste of life even in difficult times. She was interested in psychology back in school and dreamed of helping other people cope with emotional trauma, perhaps because she herself went through the painful experience of her parents' divorce and very subtly understood what was going on in the soul of an abandoned child. Now she is in her last year of university studying clinical psychology, working part-time at a children's family support center. Savannah told Marcus more than once that she wanted to open her own office and provide psychological assistance to teenagers who had experienced a divorce. Every time she shared her plans with him, her face lit up with a special light, a sign that she had found her true calling. She and her brother stayed especially close, often spent time together, laughed, remembering their childhood years. It took them a lot of effort to forgive the past, but now they looked forward with optimism. The heart surgery that Marcus helped pay for an old friend, Jason, gave him a second chance. Doctors warned of a long rehabilitation, but Jason's resilience and family support did their job. He not only recovered, but also found a purpose in life. He began working at a charity foundation to support people with cardiovascular diseases. His story became an example for hundreds of patients, proving that with proper treatment and strong moral support, even the most serious health problems can be overcome. 10 years ago, Jason and Rachel lived in constant fear of losing each other, but now they have stability, joy, and confidence in the future. Their twins were already grown up, in school, and thinking about going to college. Often they dropped in to visit Marcus, where the whole old company, once scattered by life's storms, gathered. During this decade, Lillian Carter went through the difficult path of a single mother, raising her daughter Sophie almost alone. Zach Harper, who abandoned her while she was still pregnant, was still forced to pay alimony, not without the intervention of those persuasive methods that Marcus used through his people. Sophie grew up as an inquisitive, cheerful girl, which was largely the merit of Lillian. She surrounded her daughter with care and love, despite all life's difficulties. She and Marcus communicated a lot in the first years after Jason's surgery. Initially, their relationship was friendly. They had a common past, common memories, common pain for Jason. However, gradually, step by step, friendship began to develop into a deeper feeling. No one could have predicted this outcome at the very beginning, because each of them had their own difficult history and their own burden of disappointments behind them. But time, mutual understanding, and the ability to appreciate the little things in life brought them closer. 3 years after Marcus's divorce and her unsuccessful musician leaving Lily, she and Marcus realized that they were no longer connected only by caring for children and friendship. They began to meet, at first carefully, without ardent statements and loud promises, because everyone had fears. But the feeling turned out to be stronger than doubt, and one evening, when the sun was golden on the California coast, Marcus still decided to tell Lillian that he wanted to be with her. This is how they began a life together, full not of loud passions, but of deep, mature understanding, which makes it possible to move forward, protecting each other from new blows of fate. Sophie adored Marcus, seeing in him what her real father could not give her. Gradually, she got used to addressing him as Uncle Marcus, and over time, as she grew older, this address turned into the confidential Dad. and although none of them specifically wanted to impose this idea on the girl, their relationship spoke for itself. He loved Sophie like his daughter. Vince, always ready to help, also built a calmer life over these 10 years. He retained his share in Marcus's new business, remaining a shadow partner. Many considered Vince to be almost the second engine in the company's affairs. If Marcus was the head of strategy, then Vince acted as a man of action, quickly finding the necessary connections, methodically knocking out the best conditions and contracts. He remained a bachelor, enjoying his independence and time to devote to himself and his hobbies. But, as he himself said, he had a huge family, after all. The family of Marcus, Jason, and Lillian had long accepted him as their own. What happened to Emily? Her affair with Graham ended quickly and painfully as soon as it became clear that there was no more money or prospects for being the kept woman of a rich husband. Graham disappeared as easily as he had appeared. Emily remained in a rented apartment with small savings, which soon melted away. She tried to hold on to her previous job, but even there her reputation was damaged by hasty decisions and lack of focus. As a result, she changed several companies, trying to find herself and cling to at least some stability. The first years after the divorce, she had almost no contact with the children. Travis openly did not want to see her, and Savannah was too vulnerable to take steps towards her mother on her own. Emily suffered, but instead of stubbornly restoring the connection, she often pulled away, ashamed of her action. Only time helped them establish shaky contact. When Travis turned 18, he himself decided to talk to his mother, explaining to her how traumatized he was by her leaving. Savannah also gradually found the strength to communicate with Emily more out of compassion than out of former affection. The daughter saw that her mother sincerely repented, but was experiencing difficulties even when trying to establish communication. It so happened that when Savannah went to the psychology department, she helped Emily a little. She advised her to turn to specialists and undergo a course of therapy. Emily, albeit belatedly, finally began to deal with her inner pain and unforgiven grievances. By the age of 38, she managed to open a small marketing agency. She no longer lived in luxury, but she was able to work for herself and gradually start over from scratch. She didn't get rich, but at least she took control of her life and learned to take responsibility for her own mistakes. Contact with children remained rare, but now at least without anger and reproaches, rather, with cautious mutual understanding. The years passed, and 5 years after meeting at Jason's hospital bed, Marcus proposed to Lillian. Everything was modest, without unnecessary pomp. A warm family dinner, at the table Marcus's parents, Jason and Rachel, children, Vince. Only the closest ones. She agreed, and 6 months later they got married. Travis and Savannah stood next to them that day. Sophie was a bridesmaid, although she smiled through tears of emotion. For everyone, this was not just a celebration of a new family, but a symbol of victory over old pain and evidence that life can give a second chance. For the 4th year since Marcus and Lillian became husband and wife, they lived on the outskirts of San Diego, near the coast, in a bright 2-story house with a spacious terrace, surrounded by a garden where Lillian grew roses and peonies. There was a beach nearby where they went out in the morning to watch the sunrise or have a family picnic. The main event of recent months was the news of Lillian's pregnancy. She was already 34, and she believed that after Sophie was born, she might no longer decide to have a child. But everything worked out naturally, as if life had smiled at them again. Marcus looked forward to the addition to his family with delight, and this feeling was brighter for him than ever. Probably because now he was more mature, more aware, and ready to invest all of himself in this child. "This is your child too, Sophie," he said more than once, looking affectionately at his adopted daughter. "You will be our main older sister." Sophie laughed. "Oh yes, I can already imagine how I teach him to walk and talk so that Dad can rest." The morning was fresh and quiet. In the middle of spring, when the sun was not yet burning, but was only gently warming the earth, Marcus went out onto the porch, stretched, and caught himself thinking that he was feeling real happiness. Just as his father, Thomas, ran the household, Marcus now enjoyed being the boss of his family. Lillian, slightly rounded at the waist, followed with a smile. She pressed herself close to her husband, and he hugged her, leaning down to kiss her temple. There was no longer any doubt. They were family. On this day, Vince was supposed to come to visit them. Who had been away for a whole year, he went on a long-term business trip on business with a partner company, representing the interests of Randall Data Shield in the Asian market. When the sound of a car approaching was heard in the yard, Marcus smiled and went out to meet his old friend. Vince, cheerful as always, in a stylish light jacket, got out of the car, spread his arms wide and shouted, "Where is my beloved family?" Sophie ran up to them, and Vince immediately caught her into a friendly hug. Even though she was already quite an adult girl, she still laughed, feeling his sincere joy. "You've grown up, baby," he said, kissing the top of her head. "I'm not such a baby anymore, Uncle Vince," Sophie joked. Lillian came out next. Her belly was already noticeable, and Vince couldn't resist taking her into a careful embrace. "Lily, congratulations to both of you. It's high time for Marcus to get another fidget." She smiled, and Marcus emerged behind Vince with the traditional proposal. "Well, brother, maybe we'll have a beer on the porch." Sitting on old wooden chairs where Thomas had once sat, the friends sipped cold beer. The sun was pleasantly warm, and somewhere from behind the house one could hear the laughter of Sophie, who was playing tag with Lillian. Moments like these were priceless for both men. They reminded them of what they had been through and how valuable the silence after the storm was. "Well, tell me, how is it in Seoul, Tokyo, and other places?" Marcus asked, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, it was interesting. They have their own idea of how to run a business. But our products went well, so we seriously grabbed the market. I think that in 6 months or a year, going public is just a matter of time." Sounds inspiring. "To be honest, I'm not in a hurry to take the company public yet, but your pressure and arguments convince me more and more." Vince raised his eyebrows slightly. "Oh, what? Monsieur Randall finally wants to enjoy life and not just slog through work?" Marcus grinned, took a sip of beer, and nodded towards Lillian. "Yeah, there's a reason. Soon another little person will join us. I would like to follow his first steps not only on video, as was once the case with Savannah. Understand?" Vince looked at Lily, who was smiling at him just at that moment, standing at the door. She just glows with happiness. "You yourself, brother, seem to have become younger." Marcus looked down at the dark glass of the bottle. "I didn't expect that I would feel so complete after everything that happened. When Emily left, it felt like my life had fallen apart. But then I realized this was a chance to start all over again." Vince put the bottle on the floor near the chair, leaned forward a little, looking at his friend, "And that's how it should have been. You are now at the peak of happiness, I see it. Calm, confident, loved, and with a wonderful future." They were silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Pictures of the past surfaced in Marcus's head. The courtroom, bank documents, Emily's face when the judge announced the decision, the look of the children, full of resentment and misunderstanding. All this now seemed so distant, as if it was happening in another life. Years have passed when the pain was almost physical, but now it has receded, leaving only scars as a reminder that one should not betray oneself and one's values. Vince, understanding what his friend was thinking about, patted him on the shoulder. "Hey, don't get stuck. It's all behind us." On the same day, other family members arrived in the evening. Travis and Savannah arrived and decided to take the day off to see Vince. Travis looked confident as he told Vince about his new cybersecurity project. "I'm trying to implement a blockchain-based system so we can better track data leaks. This could be a cool addition to Dad's decisions." Vince nodded knowledgeably and considered the benefits. "Great idea. It will be necessary to present it to the board of directors." Savannah smiled as she listened to their conversations, but she herself shared the news that she had been offered an internship at a private clinic where they work with teenagers experiencing severe psychological trauma. "If everything goes well, maybe I can stay there permanently. This is what I dreamed of, helping children who are faced with misunderstanding of their family or have experienced a parental divorce." Marcus looked at her with pride, realizing that, despite all his mistakes in the past, he had raised a wonderful daughter. When the conversation turned to whether the children maintained a relationship with their mother, there was a short silence. Marcus did not interfere, leaving them to answer on their own. Savannah was the first to speak. Mom sometimes calls me and asks how things are going. We met several times in a cafe. She became calmer. Sometimes I see that she is hurt by the memories, by the thoughts that we are not nearly as close as before. But she's trying. Travis shrugged. I also keep in touch with her, but honestly, Dad, she's already like a stranger to me. I'm not saying I hate her or anything. It's just that time has passed and something new has taken the place of the old wound. I don't feel angry, I just don't care. Marcus nodded understandingly. It's up to you to decide how much communication is enough. The main thing is not to harbor grudges. Life is too short to live in the past. In the evening, when the sun's rays turned golden, the whole company went to the beach to fry fish and vegetables on the grill. It was a real holiday, bustling life, laughter, stories about plans and memories. Jason and Rachel arrived by car too, their twins now big teenagers who immediately joined the volleyball team against Travis and Sophie. Lillian helped Linda and Rachel cut vegetables, and Marcus fanned the coals, glancing at his wife from time to time, worried about her fatigue. But seeing how she laughed cheerfully at Vince's jokes, he knew everything was fine. The sun began to set towards the horizon. The colors in the sky changed from orange to pink and purple. The sea was calm, and only a light surf rustled at our feet. It seemed that time had stood still, allowing everyone involved in the evening to enjoy rare moments of serenity. They moved a little to the side, walking along the water's edge. Marcus put his arm around Lillian's shoulders, feeling her press against him. Her rounded belly made itself felt. She got tired faster than usual. "How are you?" he asked, trying to put all the tenderness he could into his voice. "Happy," she answered quietly and smiled. "I'm a little worried. You know, after all, so many years have passed since Sophie was born. I'm going to be a mother again, and I want to do everything right." "You will. We will do it together," he assured, "and the children will help, and Sophie and Travis and Savannah and everyone who is here. We are no longer the frightened people we were 10 years ago." She looked into his eyes. "Thank you for not being afraid to love again and giving both me and Sophie a chance. No, thank you for showing how you can believe in the future after all your mistakes." When it got dark and the company left, only Vince and Marcus remained at the porch. Lillian, tired after a busy day, went to rest, and Sophie had long since gone up to her room to sort out her textbooks. A soft silence reigned all around, only the chirping of evening insects and the soft rustling of the wind in the leaves of palm trees. The light from the lamp above the front door illuminated the steps of the porch, where the men once again sat with glasses of cold beer. Vince looked around the house, the illuminated windows, and the cozy courtyard with a smile. Having taken the last sip of beer, Vince put the bottle next to him and, grinning, issued the final phrase, in which a familiar, slightly mocking tone sounded, reflecting long-standing confidence in his friend. "I was sure that you were not one of those sufferers who were ready to forgive betrayal." Marcus laughed, looking at Vince. He remembered that anonymous letter. Sender unknown. Topic: how do you stand for this? "I guessed that there was no one else but you," Marcus said and smiled at Vince. "Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one."